Hello everyone and welcome to the Good Times News Studio. We're back, and what a beautiful way to kick off bringing back Good Times News and to talk to one of our legends of camp, Bear Shibuya. Bear, thanks for coming in.
Oh, you're welcome. And just so everybody knows, we've both been vaccinated and all that, and I've been tested as recently as this weekend, and we've signed imaginary waivers that we can appear without masks.
Yes, we have. We had Josie check Bear's vaccination card at the door, and I know she can read thoroughly at the age of 2, so I know Bear's good to go. So, yes, thanks for coming, Bear. As you know, this is CCAM, Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. You're going to be seeing a ton of different interviews and videos throughout the month, and we thought what a wonderful person to help kick it off than with Bear. Has been around camp forever. Bear, how long have you actually been with Camp Ronald McDonald?
You know, I was thinking about it, and then it scared me. It's about 38 years.
Whoa.
38 years I've been involved.
38 years. We know that's older than every single camper. That is older than most of our volunteers, let's be honest. So Bear's been here from almost the very beginning, and I think that's a wonderful place for us to start, actually. Bear and I were talking earlier about tradition and how important that is, and I know there's so many things that play into camp that Bear has helped not only bring to camp, but carry through. Bear, do you want to talk a little about that and your view on tradition and the importance it plays?
Yes. Some years ago I was talking to a camper, and it was her last session. And we just happened to be, it was the last night, we just happened to be sitting, there's a group of people talking nearby, and she said, you know, I like the new counselors, they have so much energy and they're so friendly, but I'm glad that you know, there's some of the old-time counselors here, and that's one of the things I think camp benefits from. It's a full range of ages and experiences of counselors, and so she was telling me about how she started with family camp, and so I asked her, do you have a picture of your family sitting in front of a bookcase with pumpkins? And she goes, yeah. And I said, yeah, that family camp was in October. I took that picture. And she goes, no way. She said, yeah, we have a video of us at that session. I said, yeah, I'm the skinny guy with black hair running around. but I really believe that, well, with any camp, that it's important for a camp to have internal traditions. It's important for campers as well as counselors to have some touchstones, something that they can feel a part of, something that's unique to the camp, both in what we do, but also the purpose behind it. I was thinking about how so often we talk about different things. One of the big examples is rock and roll breakfast, and how campers will dance to the music, but mostly it turns into this big walk around. And what hit me was back in college I was studying about different interactions, and they were talking about in medieval times, medieval castles, how they would have the big courtyard within the castle walls. They'd have the church. People would work hard all week long. On Sundays they would come to church, and then after church they would go out and they would promenade around, they would walk around, and there was a chance to see the entire community, to interact with people, and to feel a part of something larger. And they were saying how the class I took was saying how this translated in the 80s and 90s into shopping malls, where kids would walk around in shopping malls and see each other. And when I was watching Rock and Roll Breakfast from an outside point of view, that struck me, that notion of doing that, and how different communities do that. Square dances. Yeah. There's even that move about promenade your partner around. You know, all those things. The square dances were a way of the community not only feeling a part of each other, but for people to interact. You know, and so I was seeing the values in that, and you know, you approach it from an intentional point of view, intentionality. So up at camp, we use monkey's fists and gopher's eyes. That's a part of our camp tradition.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the monkey's fist. This was something that I learned at another camp, UCLA's Camp for Underprivileged Children, UniCamp. Gopher's eyes was a knot tied by one of the counselors there that he brought up to Camp Good Times also, a guy named Chris Usey, whose nickname was Gopher. You know, and there's a whole story behind that, and there's a whole story behind the monkey's fist.
Yeah.
They go into different kinds of traditions like that. I know one of the things that we often do at the end of the session is kids will have their camp shirts, and they will sign them for each other on the back, and it's kind of like yearbooks.
Yeah.
Something to remember. I was here at this point in time, and I think within that tradition, it's important to make it your own and put your own intentionality, even if you don't always say what it is every time.
Yeah.
For me, I always look for a place on the shoulder to write my name on a camper. And one of the campers noticed this and said, "Why do you always write your name on the shoulder?" And I said, it's like in the old-time cartoons when the character is faced with this difficult decision. They would be sitting there trying to figure out what goes on, and on one shoulder a devil would appear and tell them to choose this path. And on the other shoulder a little angel would appear and say, choose that path. And so I told the camper, I always write my name on the shoulder so I'm there too, so we could double team the devil. And I think, you know, there's something about that to figure out a way to honor the tradition, figure out a way to make it meaningful in your own right, and to add to it.
Yeah.
You know, to put something in there. One of the traditions up at Camp Good Times, and I think it was brought to camp by Brian Crater, and it was these craft sticks, and so on the last day of camp, well, the day before, campers are given these sticks, and they write on there a wish or a hope for the next camp session to come up, and they'll write down their thoughts, and then each cabin will come up, and every camper has the opportunity to say what's on their stick. They don't have to, but they have that opportunity. These wishes and hopes are then gathered up, and they become the spark for the next group's campfire. So I always loved that. It became this thing where, on the one hand, it's a chance to express what you want to leave behind. On the other hand, it's a chance for you to receive help from the last group that was there and start out your week. You know, even if it's not read to you, just knowing that the hopes and wishes were going out was important. And I think it's also important for campers as well as counselors to understand that they're a part of a continuum. And I think a lot of people understand this. I've seen people that will decorate their sticks. I've seen people that write them out at home and bring fancy sticks that they've done just to be a part of that.
I think Primetime tapes 3 together, so he can have a 3-sided stick.
Yes. So people embrace that, and they do what they can to make it their own. We're laughing because there's somebody working with a power tool outside, embracing the notion that things always go not according to plan.
Absolutely, and we roll with it.
Yeah. So what I usually share has to do with something that happened a long time back. In 1994, I was a counselor. It was in the late afternoon. There's a period of time after dinner, before the evening activities start, and we'd go back to cabins and get ready. So I was walking ahead, and there was a camper behind me whose name was Troy. Troy at that time was a recent amputee. He lost his leg to cancer, and it was a recent amputation, and he came to camp because he didn't want to miss out on camp. I guess even though he still had to have a wheelchair, even though he was a young kid, because this is a recent change. He didn't have prosthetics, and he wasn't good with crutches yet. So I'm walking down this gravel path going towards the cabins. I know Troy is behind me, and I see him back there. And then as I'm walking along, I can hear the wheels of his wheelchair crunching on the gravel. And I'm thinking to myself, should I should I go back? Should I offer to help? Should I just get behind him and push him like it's no big deal so that it doesn't draw attention to it? And then I'm thinking, well, some kids would rather do it themselves. They don't necessarily need to have somebody pushing them. It's part of their growth to learn to handle it on their own, because I'm not always going to be there. So I'm struggling with this in my head, right? Because I'm way too into my head about this. And I'm thinking, should I do this? Should I do that? What's the best way for me to handle this? Should I ask him, or does that draw too much attention to it? And so then I hear, as he's going along, that he stops. He actually stops rolling along. Oh no, has it gotten too tough for him? What do I do now? And I'm going through all these thoughts and all this angst in my head. And then what happens is that Troy got out of his wheelchair, hopped behind, and kind of propped his arms up like this, and with his leg, he's kicking that wheelchair like a scooter, and he just zooms right around me. He leaves me standing there with all my thoughts. And luckily I had enough presence of mind to whip up my camera and take a picture of him as he zoomed past me. And this is in 1994. And since then, I look at that picture for inspiration, partly because of that story, but partly because his t-shirt, as he goes by, I look at it, and his shirt says on the back, "Never, ever, 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 ever give up." And so that's what I put on my stick. That's what I hope for campers at the next session, and for everybody who's watching this, the strength of that spirit.
Yeah. And just so our folks at home know that what Bear's talking about, we actually have a copy of the photo I'll put up on the screen now so you can see it. And Bear and his handy camera snapped it. So a few thoughts there. You can see the difficulty when you're super intentional with everything, as our counselors are, especially Bear. When he's trying to decide how to help Troy, he's so intentional with his thoughts and his actions that he just sit there in his head, and there goes Troy right by him. So give the camper a second, and they can just surprise you. And number two, I guarantee you there are folks at home right now pulling out their camp shirts to see if there's a bear written on their shoulder. I can almost 100% guarantee that. I'm curious if I have a bear written on my shoulder somewhere. If you've ever played dice tag with Bear, you'll get a bear drawn on you somewhere. That's for sure. Bear, we could probably go on forever with your thoughts on the importance of tradition and intentionality at camp. I would love one final thought from you around one of your moments at camp that just, in addition to the moment with Troy, something that really stands out that just makes you smile and laugh about being at camp. I know that's a tall order for 38 years, but is there anything that just brings pure joy to your heart that sticks out right now? I'm putting you on the spot. This is a hard one, I know.
It's so hard to narrow it down to one.
Yeah.
Camp has been so much a part of my life for so long. Every session becomes a family reunion and a chance to welcome new people in. And I think one of the greatest truisms of camp is that when you describe it to somebody else, people often say, "Oh, you're such a good person for doing that." But each one of us inside knows, I get so much out of this. I benefit in so many ways that this is not just me standing there handing down gifts. This is me being part of a community, and we're all lifting each other up. And I think it's that kind of feeling, that kind of warm sense of community, of family, that carries through so many ways. That I think is the thing that warms me inside. I just can't pick one thing. There are just so many.
I didn't expect you to. Well, I think it's safe to say that you've probably impacted more lives at camp than even you know. There's probably someone in your first year or two that you gave a monkey's fist to, who probably came back as a counselor and learned from you to make a monkey's fist, and then made a monkey's fist for a kid themselves who now treasure that with their whole heart. So those little things that you've done throughout your years, it probably has such a ripple effect on the thousands upon thousands of kids you've had a chance to interact with. Probably a good 40 or 50,000 kids at this point. I don't know how that sits with you to know that many kiddos you've had a chance to impact their lives.
You know, that's such a humbling thing, and part of it is that it's not just me interacting, it's the strength of all the counselors together impacting. I remember being at work once and talking to somebody there, and this fella said, "Oh yeah, I got a nephew that had childhood cancer." And I go, "Oh really? You know, what's his name?" He looks at me like, "Oh yeah, right." That's like saying, you know. And anyway, so I said, "No, really." So he goes, "His name is Sal," and I go, "Oh yeah, Sal." And he looks at me, "Yeah, right." I go, No, Sal. He had cancer and he had to have part of his jaw removed. I remember that. He's such a good guy." And he looks at me and he said, what is this, really? Yeah. And as much as you say, my life has intersected with so many other lives, so many other lives have touched mine. It really is so much of a part of being a family, so much of being connected. And I think the more you dive into it, the more you give of yourself and look for ways to make other people's lives better, the more you get, everybody gets lifted up, you get lifted up too. It's not a selfish thing, it's just part of being on a journey with a lot of people. But yeah, so camp has been such a part of my life, and I hear that from so many campers, and it's so true for myself.
Completely agree. Well, I know just personally you've impacted my life just a little bit, quite a bit, and I'm proud to call you one of my close friends. And I think on behalf of the tens of thousands of campers and staff, thank you for being a part of theirs and for everything you've done for our organization for 38 years and counting, and we look forward to another 38 more, I hope. So Bear, thanks for joining us. I don't know if there's any final words you'd like to say to those watching before we sign off.
I love you all.
There you go. All right, we'll see you soon. Bye, y'all.